I saw a presentation recently about how you're supposed to present a talk, so you're supposed to start with a funny anecdote or a joke. I'm very bad at scripted jokes, but I'll give it a try. I do not know what to do here, but back home we say jokes about little Anne. So, little Anne, well, the question is, the joke I guess is, where did little Anne go after the explosion? Well, here, there, in the other corner. Oh, I know. I can be funny. Not unscripted though. I'll do my best. So I'm here today because I have one list 3 times. I have this list on my old notebook. I have this list on my iPhone notes and a synced version of my Google account, just in case I won't ever lose it whatsoever. And that list reads, things that can and will explode given the chance. Volcanoes, pigs, whales, ants, and toads, supernovas, other explosions like bombs, grenades, and artificial man-made explosives, and cans under pressure, and I, because sometimes I forget that I'm not a 15-year-old going through teenagehood and I need to express my feelings. So we'll start from the beginning, right? I think that when you hear about explosions, we can all think about the boom boom, you know, and a Michael Bay film and the big cloud coming afterwards, you know. So, but I was very fond, and I feel like if you've ever been 12 years old, you're always very fond of the explosion in the movies and the main hero walking out, you know, without looking in the back. But I never felt like explosion was a good word for what was happening, you know. It doesn't really like gives it away. It's like it ends with a genre, like a very casual thing. Like it's not that nice. It doesn't give away the feeling what it is. So a while ago, I was going through the James Joyce phase, and I was going through Finnegan's Wake. Yeah, I know. Sorry, we've all been there. And there in one of the passages, Lord Hereford extodinates a casual evening in the bard, and he goes. I don't remember because my notes are not here exactly how it goes, but the sound is like he exodinated through the right fight in Fluaters with an intervention, if I pronounced it correctly. And that felt really good, you know. Extodination sounds like what explosion should sound like, you know, because explosion is not that good. So I have a lot of words that I'm fond of when it comes to explosion. Combustion is not one of them, because combustion means that something leads into a fire. But if you explode, you don't have to end up in a fire. For example, when supernovas explode, which is the largest explosion that we can possibly have, there is no fire because there's no oxygen. It's large release of energy. So what happens in an explosion is a rapid increase of volume and energy instantly. So it's like this second or a period of very small time when something explodes. So volcanoes, for example, the first thing in my list is when magma rises, and then there's the creation of gas that then pushes the earth and explodes into magma. Sometimes it looks like a fire, not a fire, definitely burning. There are a lot of phrases that I really like when it comes to explosion, you know, exploding to pieces, busting, combusting, falling apart, outbursting, all those things. Explosions tend to be very magnificent. But in nature, where the first explosions ever occurred, they weren't that big of a deal. So when we talk about explosion animals, we have 2 things. The ones that humans-made animals explode, which was a thing for a really long time. Like during the Second World War. Never say that word right. We had this idea, the Soviet Union, had this great idea of, you know, strapping bombs into dogs and then releasing them against the German crowd, so then they would go through the tank and then it would explode. Brilliant. It didn't work though. So when I talk about exploding animals, I don't mean that. Or I do not talk about how we tested bombs on pigs and we exploded it. Or the fact that when in the 70s, for the first time in a really long while, a whale rushed up against the Florida shore and they didn't know what to do with the carcass, they decided to explode it with dynamite. That's not natural explosion, that's man-made created explosion. When I talk about natural explosions in ants, pigs, toads, and whales, is when they naturally. For example, whales explode post-mortem. So they're up to the sheet, and then through the process of like deterioration, they create Is that 9 minutes?
5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, 5 minutes. Good to know. They burst into things. So you can see, if you Google it and you end up in a YouTube video, you'll see like a lot of very dramatically looking procedures of like whales exploding. Toads, on the other hand, explode as a form of protection. When there's like too many birds around, they inflate in order to protect themselves and then accidentally explode. Pigs, though, cannot really consider their manure, and sometimes there's a little bit too much methane in there, so that makes them explode. And ants, my favorite one, they explode to protect other people. We still haven't figured out how exactly it works, but whenever a nest is under attack, several species of Asian ants find themselves exploded in order to protect them. It's really quite more interesting than strapping bombs into dogs and then sending them out in the field. And then we have supernovas, which was the reason why we're here today, right? Because sometime there was an explosion. The other astronomical explosion that we can possibly have is a large mass of a comet or something busting into a planet and exploding it. That's the second larger explosion that we can possibly have. And then third is the atomic bomb, a man-made object. The first explosive material that we came around was gunpowder, and then the first really big break was around the late 1800s, where we came out with nitrocellulose, which was the first time we were able to contain a chemical component into another material, and then that in other occasions would explode. And then we had the great idea of turning that into film, because you really want bursting film emotion and exploding much better than an actual explosion. And then after that we came up with dynamite, which, I mean, you know, you've already seen the Western. And last but not least, usually, oh, I forgot, I missed a part of my list. Native flora and eucalyptus forests, that also explodes. Eucalyptus is one of the few plants that can actually, it's fire resistant and has oils that tend to cut on fire in order to kill the rest of the planet so it won't take their nutrition. And of course the koala is the only animal that would eat something that has zero nutrition value whatsoever. So last but not least, I, right? Because sometimes we forget that explosion is also a lot about feelings. And it's also very big on the era of like literature and Christian romanticism, of how this exploding feelings of love or whatever. And here is Sarah's personal tale. I exploded once. It was very eye-centered, as you can tell. We measured 0 casualties. Even I survived it, and I'm the one exploding. And the story of it goes something like this. I never understood how people had toilet seats. I never understood until the day I ripped off the tape with your name from your front door and pasted on a strip on the way that you would take to school, only to pick it up a few days later. But there I was, holding that little piece of hero tape that was holding me together, as I hugged the toilet seat and puked my guts and living souls out. And it held me together. That little piece of 3 centimeter long yellow tape held me together. Not because it was yours, or because it was you, or it had your name on it, but because it wasn't you. The you part of you is the part that I really rather don't like. Your ways and your do's, and the way that you over-describe music extensively, and the way that you got me to have feelings for the wrong person is something like mixing booze I thought I had overgrown. But there I was, hugging the toilet seats, absorbing the misery, being held together by a 3 centimeter long piece of yellow tape that had precisely the size that your height missed from being a whole number, that had precisely the size that I missed from exploding to pieces.
Questions?
I have a question.
Joseph.
I have a comment. You should add something to your list of things that explode. I thought you were going to say flour. Flour explodes.
Yes, that's flour. Yeah, I know.
I just wrote that up. I thought it was on your list.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Why didn't it work with the dogs?
Oh, it was a very long
Did
process.
they come back?
Well, they came back. First of all, they were afraid of the campfire. When we trained them, we couldn't use actual moving tanks. So then when they saw a tan in action, they were afraid of them, so they couldn't go near it. When we finally started using moving tanks, to do it. So we didn't use the German kind, we used the Russian kind. So then they wouldn't go to the enemy. And then they would come back and we would have to shoot them because they don't want to explode right next to us. My favorite story out of this, so this went on for a really long time, a period of something like 13 years. We were trying to get dogs to be like determination. When all this process didn't work, the other we, the American we, had this great idea of the third choice in case the nuclear bomb didn't work. So there would be this epitome of like tape training all these dogs and dropping bombs on them and then releasing them to Japan to take over the land. There we run into a different sort of problem. Partially, we didn't have enough Japanese people, you know, in the States. So they didn't have like, you know, they smelled different than European.
Or they were in internment camps.
Yeah, well, there weren't that many to volunteer to begin with or to be captured. So they didn't have expressions of choice. Then the dogs didn't really have this like, okay, I'm gonna go kill this person now, you know? And then the last part of that was they didn't have enough dogs. Because they lost so many in the trials of getting them to do other stuff.
Victoria!